Hello, I'm Nico from Don't Games, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Fighters of the Pacific, which is our new game currently on Kickstarter that we're doing with Capsicum Games, and you can find the link below. Today I'm going to try and give you some additional insight on some of the more advanced rules of the game. Namely, I'm going to talk about retaliation, chain reactions, and the different types of ground and surface attacks that both players can do, such as torpedoes, dive bombers, and level bombing. So I'm going to give you a few examples and explain the rules. All right, here we go. All right, here we have a classic face-off. It's an F4F Wildcat. It's playing chicken with a B5N Kate Japanese bomber. The Wildcat is going to fly forward doing all of its movement, and at the end of its movement will place the Kate in its field of fire, which is these 4 hexes, therefore shooting at the Kate. The Wildcat has finished its movement and fired, therefore it has been activated. But now, whenever one of your planes is put under fire by an enemy plane, you have an opportunity to dodge. And this is what the Kate will do. It doesn't have a lot of options. It can either go to the side. It can't go straight because it would ram into the Wildcat. It could also go to the sides. In this instance, it's going to do a simple right turn and move here. You'll see that it has exited the Wildcat's field of fire. These 4 hexes, the Kate is no longer in the Wildcat's field of fire. However, the Kate has a rear gunner, and the rear gunner has its own field of fire, which are these 3 hexes, 1, 2, and 3. And now you see that the Wildcat is in the Kate's field of fire. It has already moved, so it can't dodge. So instead of the Kate taking damage, it's the Wildcat taking damage. This is what we call retaliation, and be very mindful of it when you're attacking planes that have multiple fields of fire. Alright, next up we have what we call chain reactions. Sometimes, in some cases, one plane will put an enemy plane under fire, force it to dodge. That plane will also, when it dodges, will put another enemy plane into its field of fire and force that plane to dodge, and so on and so forth, causing a chain reaction of dodges. We're going to have an example here. In this case, we have a Wildcat is attacking a zero. The zero is going to decide to do a right turn. And since it's an agile fighter, the zero is, it will do an extra turn for free, which it can do during its dodge, putting this Wildcat under fire. This Wildcat will slide, therefore putting this 0 under fire, and this 0 will slide, putting this Wildcat under fire. This Wildcat will dodge by going forward, but then it can also do a dive, the same way that the 0 could do an agile turn at the end of its movement. For free during the dodge, the Wildcat can also dive, and will go forward and put this 0 under fire. This 0 will have to dodge, for instance, here, and can no longer put anyone under fire. So once there's no longer a chain reaction, we resolve the damage of each plane in the opposite order that they were moved. So this one was the last one to move. It is destroyed by this plane. This one is not under fire, so it does not take any damage. This one is not under fire either, so it does not take any damage. This one, however, is under fire by this one, and so we'll take some damage. And this 0 is not under fire, and therefore won't take any damage. And this was the original plane. And now you have played the entire chain reaction of dodges and attacks and so forth. Alright, and finally we're going to talk about ground and surface attacks, especially surface attacks against ships. There's 3 main weapons that you can use against ships. The first one is torpedoes. So here we have a torpedo bomber, and the rule for torpedo bombers is they have to fly straight for 1x at low altitude before they drop their torpedo, and they need to have 1 space available in front of them to place the torpedo. So for instance, this torpedo bomber starts at a high altitude, so we'll have to dive and then move 1 straight at low altitude so it can place its torpedo, and then it can probably veer off for its last movement. Something that's important to note is that in order to simulate the difference in technology between Japanese and American torpedoes, we've decided that American torpedoes would move 1x per turn after all the ships are moved, whereas Japanese torpedoes move 2x's. This is to stimulate that Japanese torpedoes were a little faster, but also Japanese ships and the Japanese Imperial Navy had a specific doctrine for avoiding torpedoes, which made them a little better at avoiding them. And so we've made Japanese torpedoes a little bit harder to dodge. They're faster, to simulate this, that the Japanese had better torpedoes and were more practiced at avoiding them. As far as dive bombers, they don't need as much range. So here you have a TBD, and in order to drop its bomb, the dive bomber just needs to dive on the X that it's targeting. So here you have the torpedo bomber starts here. It can turn to move 1, and then dive as a second move, drop off its torpedo, its bomb, and then, for instance, to veer off, therefore scoring a hit. For level bombing, and I don't have a B-26 token, so I can't really illustrate it properly, but let's say this was a B-26. The B-26, if it starts at high altitude, basically needs to move forward 2 x's at low altitude in a straight line in order to drop its bomb. So if this was a B-26, it would have to dive to engage its target, move 2, drop its bomb, and then it would have to stay here because it doesn't have any movement left. But that's where it would drop his bomb. And you could put the damage token here. And so that's the rules for the different types of ground attacks. Covers most of our advanced rules. I hope to do many more of these. Once again, Fighters of the Pacific is available on Kickstarter right now. We're about a third of the way into the campaign. It's already been funded, but there's lots and lots more stretch goals to unlock. So look in the description below and you'll find the link to the Kickstarter campaign. And I hope you enjoyed it, and see you soon. Bye bye.